In previous videos, I've talked about how other activities help me solve programming problems, like writing a blog post or running. In this episode, I want to use test-driven development only. I want to see if my test suite can work as a pair programming partner and help me solve my programming problem. Hi, I'm Rickard, and welcome to my channel. On here, I try to make videos about programming where I document what I'm working on and thinking about. And in previous videos, you've seen me work on my RL project, which is an attempt to build a projectional editor. And I will use that as an example today to work on this tdd-only approach. So let's dive in. So in this video, I want to work on this split, which is a way to organize elements on the screen. So let's have a look at how this looks like when we start RL project. So it will create this view with different panes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 panes here stacked on top of each other. So first we have the status bar, then we have 2 body panes separated by a separator pane. And the layout of this is done with this v-split. So it calculates like how much vertical space should be allocated to each pane and make sure that it renders correctly. So right now there's only support for this split in one direction, but I want to also be able to support splits in both directions, so you can nest like horizontal and vertical splits. And I imagine that there will be a problem with nested splits. And I got this realization that options, which is part of the configuration for a split, they should take a function that projects something to a terminal in the given width and height instead of taking a terminal object. However, I'm not sure that realization is correct. It's just something that I thought about. So I'll try to use TDD now and work with my test suite to see if this realization is correct or not. So sort of validating the problem, validating the realization by using TDD instead of just thinking. So let's get started. Let's see what we've got here. So first of all, when I started looking into this, I was a bit confused by this V-split, which should stand for vertical split. And then I thought, is this a vertical split or is it a horizontal split? So I thought maybe this name is a bit confusing, or it confused me at least. So I thought about renaming it to something more clear. So maybe I want to say something like split into rows. So this will organize all the child elements in rows. I think that might be a better name. So I will start by doing that rename. I'll also start my tests here in a loop. Let's see. And is it like this? Yes. So I have a command here in my editor to do a rename across files. So I'll search for vsplit and I will replace it with split into rows. I'm not sure if this is a better name. I usually come across like vertical split and horizontal split, but this name will make it clear to me right now what this is about. So I think it's better for now. So we'll find all the instances and just go ahead and do the search and replace. And after the first replace, you can see that the tests are now failing when it's saved a file. So I have some safety net here that, okay, we haven't finished the search and replace yet, and the test shows that it's not finished. So just go ahead and do the rest. And there's no need to change this one. All right. So now we're back to all passing test and the rename is done. So let's commit this. and say something like clarify Alright, next I want to work on... I imagine that there will be a problem with nested splits, but right now there's only one type of split into rows. And I also want to do a split into columns. So we have those two splits to experiment with, so we can write some tests to exercise those two and see what's going on. So the next step, I want to do some refactoring to work towards those two splits, and I will use my tests here to make sure that I don't make any mistakes in that refactoring. So what I imagine is something like we have split into columns as well. Let's just make sure that works, and then we have, or rather I want to do, let's see, let's put it down here instead. And then up here I want to call this one just, let's see, I want to call this one split only. And then now things will for sure start failing. Let's see, and then I include this one down here and say split into rows inherits from split. And now I should be back to green, right? And this, I imagine, also inherits from split, something like that. So there's a lot of generic stuff in a split, and only a few things will be different between the split into rows and split into columns. So the tests I have here are creating, let's see, split into rows. Yeah, so maybe we can just go ahead and move these tests to that class. There we go. Now when I remove the test, you can see that they will go from 18 to 17. And we can add them back in here. And we're back to 18. Alright. So now the idea is to try to move stuff that's specific to split into rows from the split class into the split into row class. Let's see if we can do that. Yeah, I also noticed that this is a static method. Probably needs to be a class method. Yeah, anyway. So what we're doing here, the project method of a split will get a list of options. And the options has some information how to lay out this child. So the proportion says something about how much space it should take up. So proportion equals 0 means it should take up as much space as it has. Otherwise, I think the proportion is floating point numbers, and it will get the percentage of the rest of the space. So right here we call get height on a child element, and that we only want to do when we split into rows. Otherwise we want to call get width. So here we want to do something like extract this method to the class. So let's see. And I think for this to work, this needs to be a class method. So let's first see if we can change that. If I just do that, the test should fail. And we need to have a class argument. And now it should pass again. Right. And now, down here, we can say class dot get size, maybe we can call it, on an option. Let's try that. That fails, and it says split into rows has no attribute get size. So let's add that one here. I'm not sure. This probably needs to be a class method, but yeah, we'll figure it out. Not options, something like that. So get size missing one, required positional argument option. Yeah, so I think this needs to be a class method or a static method, maybe. Static method might work. Yeah, that works. Okay. And we can do the same thing here. We're doing the same thing again. Get size option. Alright, so now this is starting to get a bit more generic. I continue with this extraction using my test suite as a safety net to ensure that I don't make any mistakes. I don't know, I don't want to spend too much time right now figuring out the best names for these. I think what we've got now is a generic split class. We have an implementation for split into rows, and we should be able to implement split into columns by just adding these methods. So let's commit this first. And say something like extract split base class, so that split something like that. Run the tests again, and let's add this one back. So let's see if we can write a test for split into columns, just to make sure the basic things work. So let's just copy something from here. Split into columns. Let's see. So here we're creating terminal fragments. So just some text. And we want to split this into columns. I'll do something much simpler here. Let's see. Let's just remove the cursors and just do. So we have a bunch of ones, and we have a bunch of twos, and also I should probably change this description. I lay out terminal windows in columns. So split into columns. When we project this into the given size, so let's say the width is 6 and the height is 1, let's say, then the output should be 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. Laying these out vertically or into columns. So we should have two text fragments. The first one should be 1, 1, 1. Second one should be 2, 2, 2. 1, 1, 1 will start on x0 and y0, and 2, 2, 2 should start on x3 and y0. We don't have a cursor. So let's see what happens. So now it's complaining, it doesn't have a get start size, so let's implement that one. And start size of this is the width. And doesn't have a get child size. And we do the same here, so the width is the size, the height is the height. And it doesn't have this one. And now we're offsetting in the x direction. And I'm surprised that we didn't get an error for this get size. Let's see what's going on. Are we getting an error somewhere? No. Okay, so we expected these two lines, but they didn't appear. There is no error, which surprises me a bit. I continued to investigate. I changed the proportion option in the test. I'm not really sure why it didn't work before. And I implement a getWidth method. And finally, the split into columns works. Okay, so let's go back to this test right here. And it's passing now. So maybe there's some more tests to write here, but this shows that we can now do split into columns as well. So we'll go ahead and commit this. So now comes the part that I was actually interested in seeing when we mix and nest two different kinds of splits. What's going to happen? What problems will we see with this implementation? So I would like to use my tests here as my pair programming partner and try to write an example to exercise to make this thing I'm thinking about concrete, like make an example of what I'm thinking about and see what the tests respond with. And this test will involve both split into columns and split into rows, so I'm not sure where to put them, but maybe we can put them here on the split just to put them somewhere. I don't know. Let's start the test again. Let's just make sure that we can do something here. Yeah, sure. So first I want to grab a few text fragments like this one. And let's just steal this. So I have a bunch of ones, I have a bunch of twos. Let's do a bunch of threes as well. And now I want to do a nests, so whoops, one more. So when this is layout, it will be something like 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. So this will be a vertical split, and here we'll have a horizontal split, or keep using the confusing names, but and it should lay out like this. So this is what I would like to happen. So let's see if we can do that. So in that case, let's do split into rows first. The first row will be the top row, and then we'll have terminal 3 down here. And we need to define that one first. So the top row is split into columns, where we have terminal 1 and terminal 2. And here we need to define a size for the top row. And I think this is where I'm thinking it's going to be a bit problematic, but let's see. So the top row, let's make it 6 wide and 1 high. And for the second one, let's make it equally wide and 2 rows high. Yeah, we should not print this one. Let's just see what we get here. I'll just copy and paste this, and then we can verify that it's correct. So we have x0, y0, 1, 1. I would have expected 3 ones. Never mind. And then we have on x3, we have 2, 2. So this is, we have 1, 1, and then we have a space, and then we have 2, 2. Okay. And the 3 is starting on x0, y on the next line. 3, 3, 9 would have expected 3, 3, 0. Okay. So let's see what's going on. So in the project function, I was expecting that this was width and height. Let's make sure. Let's have a look. Split. Oh, so it's taking height and width. Let's make this a bit clearer here and say width, height. And now we should get a different result. Let's just type what I expected here. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Yeah, that's what I get. Okay, so let's make these, just add a bunch. Let's make these 10 to make sure that the cropping is done correctly. So 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Since I made this 6 wide, I expect these to be the same, but I expect this one to add 3 more 3s. Right. Seems, whoops. So we get more 1s, we get more 2s, but the 3s are correctly cropped. Okay. So I'm guessing that's a problem with the split into columns. Oh yeah, we're using proportion 0, which means I want all of this to be shown. We actually want to do proportion 1 to say these two should take up equal space, but it's okay to crop the content. So let's see what we get. Now we're getting, yeah, what I expected. Alright, so probably nothing wrong with the implementation, just incorrect usage of this proportion in options. Might be a bit unclear how to use that, but okay. So yeah, so now we should do, this should be proportion 1. This can still be proportion, I don't know, let's just do proportion 1 on these two. And yeah, and now we are back. So the problem I envision with this, so let's see, let's inline this top row to make this a bit more clear. Or I don't know if it's a bit more clear, but let's inline it here. Let's see, like that. Okay. So the scenario here is that we have 3 panes, 3 content panes that we like to lay out in this nested, split into rows, split into columns. And the outermost one, this one right here, will get the width and height of the window. So like here in this example, the width and height is the width and height of the entire window. And down in this one, we need to specify the width and height of this particular split. And here we've done the calculations manually, so we know that when we stack 2 things in a row, the width of this one will be the same as the width of the inner split, but the height is different. So we've done some calculations there. So this, we need to duplicate this 6 and know about it, and I think we should, the inner split should not need to know how big the outer split is in order to specify this kind of thing. So that's when I had the realization that this option structure, we can have a look at it. It has a terminal, a proportion, and whether it's active or not, meaning if that particular pane will get like keyboard events and stuff. But the terminal here needs to be rendered already with a specific size and everything. So my realization was that this should not be a terminal, but instead it should be a function taking a width and height that returns a terminal. So that's I want to experiment with that and see how that would solve the problem. So let's see how we can use our tests to refactor towards that design and see whether that solves the problem or not, if my realization was correct or not. So for that to work, we need to add another thing to this options structure. And I would like to make it optional for now. So let's make a factory method saying options create. We have terminal proportion active, and then this new function which we default to none, and I will just return options terminal proportion function active. Let's do it like this first. Let's just ignore. Here I get lost halfway through the refactoring and start thinking about everything that's wrong and don't make any progress. So I take a break and come back a bit refreshed. I was realizing I started thinking a bit too much, and one of the purposes of this exercise was to actually use my tests as a pair programming partner. So the test should help me. I shouldn't just sit here thinking. And I realized that one thing that I think is not right with this example is that we have to specify the width and height there. We should not need to do that. And one way to get rid of that is to use this function instead. There might be a problem to figure out what width and height to pass, but maybe we can fake that a bit for now. So next step that I want to pursue is to just finish this refactoring completely. So we get rid of terminal here and we only use the function. So I'll figure out how to do that in small, safe steps. Here I refactor back and forth, and eventually I realized that we can support both terminals and functions, and everything will be much simpler. I think I'm going to commit this. So what do we have? So we have replaced the terminal can be a function. Yeah, so we did a lot of refactoring back and forth, and in the end we ended up with a diff that's not that much. But I still want to commit this and say refactor so that option can take a function. Just to have a better point to revert to later. But yes, so now we actually have support for passing a function instead of a terminal object, but the width and height here are not yet useful. But now the problem is a bit more clear, I think, because now whenever we want to get the terminal object, we have to call this calculate terminal, and it works both for a function and for a terminal. And we need to use it in two places. So now the problem has turned into how do we get the width and height here, and how do we get the width and height here. And if we can solve that small problem, I think we'll solve the original problem as well. So the tests have worked as a safety net and allowed us to get to this point, so narrow down using examples. At this point, I've faked the width and height, so I tried to find something more useful to pass in and then test. Get child size. Does that return? Yeah, it returns width and height. Oops, I forgot to run my tests. Let's start them here. This fails. Let's do this. Right, so we have calculated the size for this particular child window. And can't we just use the same here for width and height? Yeah. I mean, this is not... So let's see, can we actually replace this with... No? Yeah. Can we replace this with height? Yeah. Yeah, the only place we use calculate with incorrect arguments is when we call get size, which we only do if the proportion is 0. So I think maybe we have solved the problem for the cases where the proportion is not 0. So let's commit this and say okay, so I think what we need now is another example. I add another example to flesh out the last fake values of width and height. And I end up being surprised that this might actually have solved the original problem. So we probably don't have test coverage for both of these, but let's... Yeah, wow. Is this actually working for all cases? I continue to add more examples just to make sure that this thing works. I try to think of examples that, hey, this particular edge case might break things, so I just add examples to gain confidence that this solution now works. Doing this exercise, I also learned that working in a tdd-only style, adding small examples to drive the design is actually also a good way to solve programming problems. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.